When you're interviewing a sales rep for your agency, it is really easy to come away from the call with a good feeling. But the problem is that good feeling is usually based on how they've presented themselves in the interview, and closers should be pretty good at that. And what it doesn't tell you is how well they'll actually perform in your business. And if you get this hire wrong, you're not just going to be wasting your time and your energy training them and onboarding them and familiarizing them with your business, but you're also going to be burning through real sales opportunity and potential profit while they're in charge of taking your calls. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to evaluate a sales rep objectively in the interview process so you can avoid hiring the wrong person and make sure whoever you do bring on board actually does a good job. The first thing we need to look at here, and it's obvious, is how they present themselves. If they don't have a good camera and microphone, what's the point? The way that they're presenting themselves to you now is presumably how they're going to present themselves to your prospect. And if you can't hear them or you can't see them very well, it just looks bad, sounds bad, it's unprofessional, and that is just a hard no for me. Next up is their lighting and background. This kind of ties into this, which is they might have a good camera, but if they've got a window behind them and you can barely see them and it just looks terrible as well, that looks unprofessional. Everything we want to be slick, we want it to be clean, we want it to look professional, we want it to look tidy. We don't want to have laundry in the background, towels and whatever, their bed or something. It needs to be a professional and even just blank background. It doesn't have to be fancy. We want to make sure that they're wearing the right clothes. Again, this is a high ticket sales role in the online space. There's no uniform, but you want to make sure that this person is presenting themselves well. People naturally judge people based on how they appear. And if you're trying to sell something expensive to prospects and the person that's on the call is wearing something cheap, naturally they're just going to associate you and your product and your business with being cheap, with being lower quality, as they would with any other mistake on this list. And also grooming, making sure this person has got like a well-kept beard or no beard, and they don't have to have a crazy nice haircut, a particular style or whatever, but they just need to make sure that it's maintained. They're not looking scruffy, not looking like a homeless person on the call, because again, this is what people will associate your brand with. Their first impression of your company is going to be this person, quite possibly, and we want to make sure that this person presents themselves well, right? All of that being said though, everyone can have their own individual style. It doesn't have to be crazy, but just fairly decent standards in place is all we need, right? And we also want to make sure that this person's put effort into looking prepared. Maybe a little bit extra effort on this particular call than they otherwise might have put in for a sales call. For example, if they're wearing a shirt and tie. Again, there's no dress code in the online space in high ticket sales. But if someone's put the effort in and actually dressed up for the interview, that is a reflection of how they want to show up for you and for your business. And that has got to be a good sign, right? Next thing we want to know is how they got here. How did they get their past opportunities? How did they get into the previous sales roles that they got into? Where did that come from? What got them interested in it? What decisions have they made that have led them into better roles or better outcomes? What have they done in terms of joining sales communities? Learning from people in the online space like Jeremy Miner or Alex Hormozy, right? Watching YouTube videos. These are things that I've done when I was a high ticket closer. Have they invested their own money or the money of the companies that they were in into learning more skills, getting better at high ticket sales? When I was a closer in 2024, I was making like $2,000 a month, barely anything, and I still invested $3,500 into a one-on-one sales mentorship program, and it went phenomenally well. It tripled my close rate on that offer. It was 6%. It was abysmal. I was the only guy who was succeeding on the offer. Nobody else could actually close, but it was still very, very low. And I knew that I needed to improve, spent my own money on it. It went really well, tripled the close rate, went from 6% to like 20%. And then later down the line, I asked the founder for a bonus, and that covered the cost of that course. And he was more than happy to do it because I'd made loads more money because I was closing more deals. This is the kind of thing you want to be looking for, right? You want to hear about people taking responsibility for the results that they've got in the past as well, right? If somebody has struggled on a role like I did when I was doing a 6% close rate a couple of years ago, you want to understand why that was. You want to hear them saying, oh, I just got into the game. I was just learning the high ticket sales. I wasn't at my best yet. I didn't understand that this was how you meant to structure a call. I hadn't learned from anyone great yet. You don't want to hear them saying, oh, all the leads were really bad and whatever. I was just unlucky and da 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 da. It was a bad offer. You want to hear people taking real responsibility because they can't control those things, the leads, the offer, but they can control how they behave and how they respond. And you want to see that people are just progressing over time, right? If someone's just been kind of stuck just in one spot for a long period of time, then clearly like they're not doing the right stuff. I mean, that's okay. Not every like these things kind of go in jumps, right? You can do the same thing for like a year and then jump up to the next thing. But really you just want to get like a feeling of like them going in the right direction. You can always tell trajectory, right? When you're having these conversations. The next thing we want to look at is what their numbers look like. Now, this is a really important one, and I'll tell you a story about me interviewing somebody in a second where this really came into play. But you want to understand on a kind of basic level, how many calls were they taking per week or per month? What their close rate is, like what was your close rate, on average, something like that. What was the average deal size, and how much cash were you collecting per month? And the thing is, you'll actually be able to do the maths on this yourself, because if they say they were taking 100 calls a month, let's just say for easy maths, and they were at 20% close rate, so that's 20 deals a month, average deal size is 3K, let's say, that would be 20 deals, 3K, 60K cash collected. There you go. So 60K cash collected would be how much they were doing, right? But if they tell you, oh, I was taking this many calls and I was at this close rate and my deal size was this, and then they were collecting an amount of cash that is just nowhere near that, then that something's not adding up, and you need to call that out. And I had an interview with somebody, really nice guy, and I didn't want to appear like rude to the guy, but he told us all these numbers. And then when he got to the end of it, we asked him how much commission he was making, and he said, oh, about like 2K. And I was like, what? You're closing this many deals every month. You're doing this many calls, whatever. We did all the numbers, and you're getting 10% commission. I don't understand how you're only making that much. And he was like, yeah, like, I don't know either. And he was kind of scratching his head. And then it turned out, like, I was like, look, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but, we really need some accuracy here. A good closer is going to know their numbers. I can still remember my close rates from when I started in high ticket sales, like from 2024, from April. Like it was 10%, 2%, 10%, 6%, 0%, 20%, 20%, 25%. That was from April till November in 2024. And I can still remember ones following that as well. So, my point is, like, the people who are good, they're going to remember the numbers and they're going to know what's up here. And the ones who aren't very good, who might be inflating their numbers, you need to watch out for. You need to make sure you've got some arithmetic ready on the call. The next thing that we're going to want to look at is how long they stick around in the businesses that they've worked in, right? How much time they spent in each of their previous roles, how frequently they change roles, the reasons why they left those roles, how willing to stay and improve in one role that they are, and also just generally that overall pattern of stability. Again, I'll use myself as an example. My first high ticket sales role I did from April 2024 until December 2024. Now, I didn't leave this business. The business shut down because there were various issues on the back end with fulfillment, and that was out of my control. Business shut down. So I had to go, right? That was it. But I stuck through it the whole way, like all the way. Even when my close rate was 6%, even when I was making $2,000 a month, through the trials and tribulations, the trenches, I stuck through it. I did over 600 sales calls and eventually, cracked the code, got to 20%, 25% close rate, and things were going well on the front end, but yeah, back end didn't go very well. And then the next role that I got into, which was for a year from December 2024 till December 2025, I just stuck with it. And I know so many people in the online high ticket sales space who hopped from one offer, went there for a couple months, and that didn't work out, and then they hopped on another offer, or they started doing 2 offers, or maybe even 3 offers, and they're doing so many different things, they're spinning so many different plates, and they're never just committing and dialing into one thing and actually making it work. And if you want someone who will actually deliver that like A player performance for your business, you need someone who is consistent in that way, someone who sticks in, because the compounding benefit of experience and knowledge in your niche, in your business, is what's going to get the best results. And if someone's kind of spinning multiple plates, or they're always kind of one foot in, one foot out, you can never expect them to do a very, very good job. And we need them to do that, right? So, you want to understand, like, if someone is changing often, why is that? What is the reason? I can safely say the only reasons I've left the businesses that I was doing high ticket sales in is because the founders have decided to go a different direction, start new businesses, close those businesses down. There's nothing I can do about that, Like, front end can be going well, but if the fulfillment's not doing very well, what can you do? And I think, another good thing to look for is that willingness to stay when it's difficult. If someone's telling you that they've been on the same offer for like almost a year, and they tell you all about it and it sounds terrible, you're like, damn, but they're still sticking with it. That is a certain that tells you a lot about the person, right? Their willingness, the character trait of that kind of resilience, is what we're looking for. We want someone who's consistent, because if you've got a good offer and a good business, and this person's resilient, then they're going to do a great job. They're going to be able to put their foot down. They're going to be thinking, this is easy. I can crush this. My old offer was the tough one. This one's great. So yeah, we want to assess all these things because it's very important. You don't want someone joining the business and then just disappearing after a couple months or even less, couple weeks, just because they're unhappy. I've seen it happen in the businesses I've been in. It's annoying. It's a real waste of time. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is how they sell themselves. Now, this is an easy one to get fooled by, right? Because we're talking to high ticket closers. In theory, we want someone who is selling us on themselves the whole time. We want to feel sold. We want to be like, damn, I want to hire this guy. That's the feeling we want to get. But that's not the only thing we're going to evaluate them based on, because they might be an amazing closer, but really inconsistent when it comes to the actual day-to-day business side of things that they need to be able to do, like all the CRM stuff, tracking, management, following up with leads, etc. So that being said, though, obviously better to have someone who's fantastic at sales, not very good at those things, than the other way around. So yeah, you want to understand, you want to kind of assess, what questions are they asking you to understand your situation? Like, imagine you're a prospect and they are selling you themselves, which they effectively are. Are they asking you questions about the business? Open questions. How much revenue are you guys doing? How long have you been around? How do you currently get your leads? What are you, who have you got in place to, have you got an appointment set? Just general exploratory questions that they would need to ask if it was a sales call to help better understand your situation. And then you want them to map their skills and experience to the information that they just got from you, in the same way that they would do that to a prospect in a sales call, right? You want them to kind of map out their experience and how it's relevant to your role. And you want them to push forward towards next steps. If the person's not kind of trying to close you a little bit in the interview, trying to be like, who else are you interviewing? What makes you think you need to speak to those people? You've already got someone awesome in front of you, whatever. Not quite like that, but you get the idea. Then that's usually a good sign. I don't expect the person to hard close you and force you to hire them on the call. Obviously they can't do that, and that's not necessarily appropriate. But if they're not doing a little bit of sales spice in there, if they're not adding that into the mix, then they're not going to be doing that again on the sales calls with your prospects. And yeah, you want them to lock in follow-up next steps. They should be asking you, what's the next steps from here? How do you want to proceed? When are we going to speak again? Maybe they're going to try and lock in a follow-up call with you. Understand the timelines. Again, this is all stuff they would do if they were closing a deal, or they should be doing. And if they're not doing it here, and they might not be, a lot of people don't, then that's not a great sign. Again, this isn't a deal breaker, but these things all come together in kind of aggregate to make up a great closer and help you understand. And you can rank people based on all the things that we've covered so far and decide, okay, who was best at selling themselves, who was best at who had the best experience, who had, relevant experience in a similar offer, something like that. You get the idea. Anyway, my final thoughts that I want to share with you really is that interviews are compressing a lot of signals into one conversation. And when sales reps are naturally persuasive, you can lose sight of some of the important signals, like their numbers, their sales metrics, whether or not they're inflated, whether they're accurate, whether they are negligent and just don't know them, or whether they are intentionally misleading you and trying to close the deal and persuade you to hire them, even though they're not the best person. You can't just let them ride on charisma. That is not sufficient. And if you're talking to them and they seem charismatic and they have those other things in place, fantastic. But if not, we want to push a little bit on that. We want to understand more about everything else, the more objective things. There are these are essentially performance indicators which exist inside the interview, and you can rank these things. Everything we've covered so far, I might actually attach a little score sheet below this video that you can download for free. Not even download it, you can just click the Google Doc and have access. You don't need to give me your email or anything. And you can assess the people for yourself. And then once you've interviewed 3, 5, 10 reps, honestly the more the better, rank them all by out of 5 or out of 10 based on their level of competency in each one of these domains, how well they showed up in the interview, how they appeared, how well they knew their numbers, what their experience was like, etc. Then you can kind of objectively decide who the best person is going to be for the role. And yeah, if you can interpret the closer better, interpret their experience and who they are and how they're going to show up better, then you're going to have a better hire, which is going to mean more deals closed, It's going to lower your CAC. It's going to increase your cash flow. It's going to make you more money. It's going to free up your time. And it's going to be awesome. And that is what we want. If you want help with any of this, building these systems, building out the interview process, interviewing the people, referring people to you, training those people, onboarding them, building the system that they operate, then I can help you with that. You're welcome to book a call with me. You can click the link in the description, and I will see you in the next video.